Lionel Richie, the man whose name has become a global icon of pop and R&B music, is the author of unforgettable love songs that anyone who has ever heard them cannot forget. He was the lead vocalist and key songwriter of the group Commodores, with hit songs like Easy, Three Times a Lady, and Brick House, taking the group from small clubs to international stages. After going solo, Lionel continued to shine with world-moving hits like Hello All Night Long, Say You, Say Me, Dancing on the Ceiling, each song an indelible symbol of the 1980s. He has won 4 Grammy Awards, an Oscar and a Golden Globe for the song Say You, Say Me, and topped the Billboard charts many times. His commercial achievements are outstanding, with over 100 million records sold worldwide. Sold-out tours and albums making Lionel one of the most admired artists in American music history. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, serves as a role model for many young artists, and still maintains deep influence across generations, from pop and R&B to modern musicians who use sampling or cover his hits. Lionel's music is not only entertainment but also a message, an emotional bridge, and proof of the enduring vitality of a legend. But behind that spotlight, Lionel Richie once went through years full of pain and challenges. From the days away from home during continuous tours, to the pressure of writing music and maintaining his reputation, he had to sacrifice time with family, face stressful divorces and disputes. The loneliness, distance from his children, and inner conflicts were challenges that no stage lights could dispel. Even his vocal health was once threatened, forcing him to rest and adjust his lifestyle. But Lionel still continued to practice, compose, and perform. It was his resilient will, the ability to endure pressure, and the determination to keep his passion for music that helped him overcome every event, turning pain into emotion for those immortal love songs. Every note, every tour is proof of the determination to never give up, showing a man who not only survives but continues to inspire despite all adversity. Before continuing, please hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you do not miss the emotional story of Lionel Richie's journey overcoming adversity. Please hit like and leave a comment. That is your way to honor the music and resilient spirit of a legend who still stands firm after everything. Lionel Richie was born on the 20th of June 1949 in Tuskegee, Alabama, into a simple working-class family where every breath was tied to sweat and hard work. His father worked in education and management. His mother took care of the family, teaching while handling all household chores, all in modest conditions, but always filled with love and resilient faith. From a young age, Lionel was drawn to music. He often sang in the gospel church, where singing blended with music and prayer became a means to express his feelings, to find faith and comfort during difficult days. Those childhood days were not only simple happiness, but also tied to challenges: old shoes, patched clothes, insufficient meals, and the pressure to live up to his parents' expectations. Lionel soon realized that if he wanted to be recognized, he had to do more than just exist. He had to sing with all his heart and soul. Tuskegee, located in the south of the United States, was a place where racial discrimination still ran deep, and black children like Lionel often faced teasing, contempt, and limited opportunities at school. There were days when he was mocked by friends just for his unusual voice or for his worn-out shoes. There were classes where he felt invisible, left behind, while other children were encouraged and recognized. But it was precisely in those empty spaces that music became the protective wall shielding Lionel from the harsh world. Every note, every gospel melody was not just learning or entertainment, but the way he raised his own voice, the means to survive, to be seen and to be heard. In the Richie family's small home, music and faith always went hand in hand. Lionel's parents, though hardworking and sometimes strict, still taught him that music and faith could save a person, could turn days of scarcity into a spiritually vibrant space. Lionel learned to listen, learned to blend into melodies, learned to turn personal emotions into music. That was his own language to express loneliness, the craving for recognition, and the desire for survival amid society's limitations. Those afternoons singing in the church, blending with the organ and the sparse applause of the community, were where Lionel realized that music could not only save himself, but also touch other hearts, create connection, create hope, and light a flame in the darkness of a difficult childhood. When he was a child, Lionel not only learned to sing, but also learned to endure. He watched his parents work from morning till night, saw his mother sometimes bleed from calloused hands due to cleaning and washing, and understood that every joy in life had to be paid for with sweat, hardship, and sacrifice. On cold winter nights, the family huddled in their small house. Lionel often felt his body shivering, but his passion for music made him forget the cold, forget the hunger and fatigue. He sang for himself, sang for his family, sang for dreams not yet formed, and sang to remind himself that he deserved to exist. Every lyric, every note, was a challenge to adversity, a declaration that even when forgotten by society, a black child could still raise his own voice and begin the journey to become a legend. Lionel Richie's childhood in Tuskegee was not only about material difficulties, but also the first lessons in perseverance and resilience. He witnessed racial discrimination, heard derogatory words, saw opportunities closed before his eyes, and felt injustice creeping into every step. But music, faith, and family were things no one could take away. From the gospel songs ringing in the church, from the music he taught himself in his small room, Lionel Richie began to build his own world, where singing was the voice of the heart, the path of survival, the only way to turn pain, injustice, and loneliness into inner strength. When he entered his teenage years, Lionel realized that music was no longer a game or simple joy. It was part of survival, part of his identity, a way for him to affirm his existence in a world that always tried to overlook him. Music became the place where he found his voice, where he found temporary peace, and where he learned to endure, to stand firm, to turn tragic experiences into creative energy that would follow him throughout his life. In those moments, even when lacking material things or affection, Lionel Richie learned that voice and soul could be the guiding flame, and from that flame, a music legend was gradually forming. Right from when he was a boy stepping out of the small streets in Tuskegee, Lionel Richie realized that music was not only joy, but also salvation to help him survive amid the pressures and shortages around him. Those childhood days in the South, alongside tiring school days and teasing from friends, he found comfort in the gospel melodies of the church. The singing blended with the organ and the scattered applause of the community was not only music, but the place where the boy Lionel realized he could exist, could be heard and felt. From those moments, Lionel began to explore his abilities with piano and saxophone, learning to create sound and emotion with just his hands and heart. He joined young bands in the neighborhood, where old instruments, worn saxophone reeds, and rehearsals in dimly lit rooms lacked enough light, but were always full of passion and determination. Every performance, even if only a few people sat silently or a few curious eyes watched, was a challenge, an opportunity for Lionel to prove his ability and learn to stand before an audience, even if they were just neighbors and friends his age. Those early experiments were not always warmly received. Lionel soon had to face rejection and mockery. There were performances where he sang loudly but only heard silence, or was teased by friends for his imperfect voice. The loneliness, the feeling of being abandoned, and the pressure to prove his own value made the boy's heart ache. But those very difficulties taught Lionel how to turn pain into motivation. Music became salvation, the place where he poured all his loneliness, all his craving for recognition, and even dreams that seemed unable to take shape. Lionel practiced in the dark room, the faint light from the window, not enough to illuminate the whole space, but enough for him to feel every piano key, every breath of his own. He took every opportunity he could, singing at small ceremonies, participating in school music contests, even raising his voice on quiet streets to challenge himself and learn to stand firm under skeptical gazes. Every failure, every rejection, Lionel did not collapse. Instead, he learned to turn pain and disappointment into emotion, learned to convey tears, loneliness, and desire through every note. Day by day, Lionel's voice became stronger, richer in emotion, and gradually formed a distinctive style. He learned to control tone, to emphasize each word, to turn every note into a profound message, a piece of soul that could be felt. In the small room, during cold dark nights, Lionel Richie turned suffering into melody, pressure into strength, loneliness into resilience. Every time he sang, he felt budding joy in his heart, the happiness of expressing himself. And most importantly, he learned that music could save. Music could turn wounds into a source of living energy. And it was music that laid the foundation for a legend that the whole world would later admire. Those early years also formed in Lionel Richie an unyielding will. When facing loneliness, rejection, or even scorn from the surrounding community, he learned to stand up, learned to keep practicing, learned to raise his voice even if no one listened. Lionel knew that, without music, he would have no means to prove himself, to survive, and to nurture the desire to escape the limits of a poor childhood and social pressure. Every afternoon, as he played the piano and hummed gospel melodies, the boy Lionel felt that music was where he found survival, where he began to form his will and resilient spirit, preparing for a long journey ahead, where the light of the stage, the spotlight, and fame would always come with challenges, loneliness, and pain. But it was from there that Lionel Richie learned to stand firm with his voice and his heart. And it was from those first notes, from the rehearsals in the dark room and the melodies ringing in the church, that Lionel Richie built the foundation for his great later career, where every song, every tour, every album was not only a musical achievement, but also proof of a man who had turned suffering, scarcity, and loneliness into strength, turning the survival dream from childhood into a music legend that lives on through time. Lionel Richie stepped out from his solo practice sessions and church recording rooms when the first big opportunity came to him through joining the Commodores, a funk soul band that was gradually rising in Alabama. Right from the early days, he had to face strict discipline and intense practice sessions that could overwhelm any teenage boy. The rehearsals took place for hours on end in a dark room, where the faint light from a single bulb shone on the old piano and saxophone, where every note was repeated until all the sounds blended into perfect rhythm. Lionel learned to control his voice, to harmonize with his bandmates, and step by step mastered the skills of composing and writing lyrics, deeply feeling the power of every word and every note. Each passing day was a challenge, maintaining focus, learning to endure fatigue and long performances, while keeping the spirit of bonding with the group members. His persistence and effort were not in vain. The Commodores quickly became a notable name, and songs like Easy, Three Times a Lady, and Brick House took the group from small clubs in the South to national spotlight, even reaching the international market. Lionel, in his role as lead vocalist and key songwriter, realized that each song was not just a musical product, but also a message, a way for the group to express its identity and connect with the audience. However, success brought enormous pressure. Long tours, buses carrying the group across states, sleeping on couches in cheap hotels, away from home and family for weeks on end. Fatigue and stress were constant, but Lionel understood that this sacrifice was necessary to bring the group's music to the world. Not only were there physical and time pressures, internal conflicts also arose within the group. Some members left, creative decisions or tour choices often led to arguments, and Lionel learned to reconcile, to maintain his own views while preserving group unity. These experiences taught him that music was not only emotion, but also strategy, the art of persuasion, and the ability to coordinate between individual and collective. Lionel also gradually realized the value of patience and the importance of keeping his voice healthy, learning to balance singing, composing, and maintaining health so as not to lose opportunities on stage. Even though admired by audiences and with continuous exploding hits, Lionel Richie also faced deep loneliness. Away from home, away from friends and family, he had to find comfort in music, in his own voice, and in his relationship with the remaining bandmates. Every note became Lionel's way to connect with the outside world, the place where he found strength to overcome loneliness and pressure, to maintain the group's cohesion, and to ensure that the Commodores not only survived, but also rose to shine globally. During the long performances that stretched late into the night, when the stage lights went out and the audience had left, Lionel often stayed behind in the dressing room or on the bus seat, looking at his old saxophone or the piano that had followed him for many years, quietly practicing and writing music. Music was no longer just a career. It became a savior, the only support when the outside world seemed too harsh, when pressure, loneliness, and personal sacrifice constantly clung to him. Those experiences shaped in Lionel Richie a resilient spirit, a sensitivity to music and audiences, and an ability to turn every note and every lyric into a living message, laying the foundation for his brilliant solo career later, where his name became a global icon, but was still formed from the hardships, loneliness, and non-stop struggle of his youth. After the years of persistence with the Commodores, Lionel Richie stepped into his solo journey, a path that opened brilliant opportunities while piling on challenges that few could imagine. His first solo album, Lionel Richie, introduced to the world a voice rich in emotion. And right after that, immortal hits like Hello, All Night Long, and Can't Slow Down elevated his name to international stature. Each song was not only a musical product, but also a symbol of an era, a message sent to millions of hearts seeking connection and hope. The quick success brought glory, chart numbers, prestigious awards, and praise from critics and audiences. Lionel Richie now became a name that anyone who loved pop and R&B knew, a living icon who led an entire generation with romantic, joyful, and profound melodies. But beneath that spotlight were non-stop stressful days, worldwide tours lasting many weeks, sometimes months, forced Lionel to leave his family and loved ones, and he had to constantly adapt to packed schedules, new stages, new audiences, and non-stop media pressure. The press constantly scrutinized everything from style, outfits, expressions to private life, leaving Lionel with no real private moment. Each new album, each released song was a battle to maintain his reputation and create the next hit, a mental pressure that only those in the music industry truly understood. He often had to practice continuously in the studio, testing many versions of the same song, working late into the night, losing sleep, sometimes forgetting to eat or rest, just to ensure every note was perfect and the lyrics conveyed the right emotion. Being away from home and his children during the busy period was a silent pain that Lionel Richie carried throughout those years. On evenings when the stage lights went out, he quietly remembered his children, their laughter, the stories not yet told, the family meals missed. The inner loneliness appeared even as the public cheered, making him realize that public success could not compensate for personal losses. The feeling of emptiness, though not shown outwardly, still lingered in the heart of a legend. Each song Lionel performed on stage became a means of release, a way for him to connect with the world when he could not be with his family. The place where he poured his thoughts, longing, and even regret for the moments missed. The prolonged mental tension and pressure to create continuous hits formed in Lionel a special inner resilience. He learned to turn pressure into motivation, to turn loneliness into emotion that nourished his music. Every note, every lyric carried a piece of his private life, a piece of lonely experience, a piece of the craving to be seen and felt. Solo success was not only fame and awards, but also proof of the ability to endure, to overcome pressure, and of the spirit that never gave up. Lionel Richie stood at the peak of fame, shining before millions of audiences. But it was precisely the sleepless nights in the studio, the long, non-stop flights, the distance from his children, and the inner loneliness that formed the foundation of a legend, a voice the whole world could not forget, and a soul that had learned to stand firm in both the light and the darkness of life. Lionel Richie met Brenda Harvey when both were young people, full of ambition, seeking a path in life and love in a world full of changes. Their love began simply but deeply, nurtured by simple dates, laughter, stories about the future, and musical dreams not yet formed. When they got married in 1975, both understood that the life ahead would not be easy. Although happy at first, this young family had to face material difficulties. From cramped small apartments to makeshift meals, everything had to be carefully calculated. Lionel, just starting his solo career, also had to provide for the family, sacrificing a lot, spending most of his time in the studio, practicing and on continuous tours, while Brenda took care of the home and the children. The long tour nights, cross-continental flights, and stressful performances forced Lionel to be away from family for many weeks, and each small distance gradually accumulated into a void in both their hearts. In the early years of marriage, Lionel and Brenda once found joy in simple moments, cooking together, sharing new songs, talking about yesterday and dreams for tomorrow. However, work pressure and fame soon became a burden. Each new album, each released song came with enormous expectations from the public and media, and Lionel had to spend most of his time maintaining his image and success on the charts. Brenda, though she loved Lionel, could not avoid feeling lonely and had to struggle to maintain stability in the family while her husband was constantly busy with tours in the studio. The distances grew longer, the promises of time together could not be kept fully, and gradually, the once sweet marriage began to show cracks. The divorce in 1993 was the inevitable result after many years of enduring silent tension. Lionel's infidelity scandal became the focus of the press, with the media not only scrutinizing his private life but also highlighting the cracks in the marriage. All eyes were watching, every comment was pressure, and Lionel had to face the feeling of being scrutinized by the public while also being responsible for his family and children. Being away from the children for long periods, the tour trips, the continuous practice hours, all became a mental burden that Lionel had to bear alone. He deeply felt Brenda's disappointment, and this made him torment himself, wondering whether all the sacrifices for his career were worth it. Throughout these years, Lionel Richie had to learn to balance between two seemingly opposing worlds, the stage lights and family life. Every evening, returning after a tour, was an inner battle, wanting to spend time with the children while also thinking about the next shows, the album in preparation, and maintaining the legendary image in the public's eyes. Time for Brenda and the children was shortened. Many meals, many birthdays, many important moments were missed. This sacrifice, although necessary to maintain his career, left emotional scars and personal decisions for Lionel, making him realize that success on stage sometimes came at the cost of emptiness in the heart. The prolonged psychological pressures caused Lionel to go through many sleepless nights, questioning his own value, questioning how fame could compensate for personal losses. But these very painful experiences formed in him a special inner resilience, knowing how to endure loneliness, knowing how to turn pressure into creative energy, knowing how to nurture affection with his children even when he could not be by their side. Lionel learned that music, although bringing glory and success, could also be the place to soothe pain, the place where he connected with himself and held firm to his ideals in the most difficult moments. The first marriage, with all its happiness and disappointment, became an important lesson in Lionel Richie's life, about sacrifice, about the value of love, about the limits that a career could impose on family. Those wounds and losses not only shaped his character, but also created deep emotions, making Lionel's music richer in feeling and more authentic, with every note carrying the story of sacrifice, love, and extraordinary willpower to stand firm before every event. From the long, lonely nights on the bus or in the studio to the days away from his children, Lionel learned to turn pain into strength. And from there, created the hits that the world still remembers, not only for the melodies, but also for the truth and soul conveyed through every lyric. After those years full of upheavals with Brenda Harvey, Lionel Richie stepped into a new chapter of his life when he met Diane Alexander. They got married in 1995 when Lionel was already an international music legend with hits that had echoed around the world. But at the same time, he carried wounds and voids in his private life. This second marriage opened the opportunity for him to find balance again and build a new family. But the challenges were no less severe. Lionel continued to raise his children while maintaining his solo career and long tours, making time with Diane and the children always limited. The distance from Nicole Richie, the adopted daughter whom Lionel had loved and cared for in her early years, became another mental challenge. Having to share affection and time between the children while meeting the packed schedule of tours, studio work, and media made Lionel sometimes feel powerless and lonely. The cross-continental flights, consecutive performances, album promotion contracts, and the pressure to maintain his position as a top world star left him with almost no private moments. And Diane had to shoulder most of the family responsibilities, leading to silent but deep tensions between the two. The divorce in 2004 was the inevitable result after many years of enduring pressure and silent conflicts. Financial disputes, media scrutiny, and criticism of his private life turned Lionel into the center of public attention once again. The scenes of being away from the children, the feeling of being misunderstood and losing control over his personal life forced him to turn to music as a place to heal wounds, where he could breathe, where he could raise his voice and emotions without fear of judgment. In the studio, he threw himself into practicing, writing music, adjusting every note and every lyric, finding calm in music. The prolonged mental tension over many years, the continuous pressure from tours and studio work, but Lionel still learned to be patient and keep his spirit strong. He realized that success on stage could not compensate for personal losses, and music only had real value when combined with presence, with family and loved ones. Lionel began to learn how to balance work and family, knowing that, although tours and studio contracts remained major responsibilities, happiness and bonding with his children were the strongest anchor. In these years, Lionel Richie gradually realized that every song, every performance night, every lyric was his way of expressing both resilience, love, and the loneliness he had gone through. His career continued to develop, albums kept selling well, and audiences still loved him. But inside, Lionel learned to slow down, to cherish every moment with his children, to learn to forgive himself, and to turn the pain from the broken marriage into motivation so that his music became deeper and more authentic. These experiences not only shaped his emotionally rich voice, but also helped Lionel grow mentally, learning to love and preserve family while still shining on international stages. Lionel knew that happiness did not only lie in the stage lights or in the awards, but in every hug, every piece of advice, every quiet moment with his children and life partner. The years with Diane Alexander, though full of pressure and events, taught him patience, the ability to endure, and the way to nurture both love for music and family affection. A spiritual foundation that Lionel later carried throughout his life and in all his steps on stage that global audiences still admire. After ending his second marriage, Lionel Richie stepped into a phase full of pressure, where his career had reached its peak, but at the same time tested his physical and mental endurance in ways never seen before. The consecutive tours, studio sessions lasting for hours, the continuous songwriting to create new hits and maintain his reputation kept Lionel's body under constant stress. Each day passed in the rushing rhythm of work, performances stretching from evening until midnight, constant travel between cities, sometimes only managing a few hours of sleep on planes or in hotel rooms. The pressure from the public and media constantly scrutinizing every detail of his private life, Every song, every performance made Lionel feel like he had almost no quiet moments. Old age began to leave clear marks. His body was no longer as flexible as before. His voice sometimes strained, his vocal cords occasionally tired and easily damaged. Lionel realized that if he did not take care of himself, he would lose the most precious thing, the voice that had followed him from the first days singing in the church, from the rehearsals in small bands to global success. Aware of that, he began to build a stricter training and rest regimen. Practice sessions were shortened but focused on quality, combined with breathing exercises, gentle vocal training, and physical therapy measures to maintain his condition. On days without performances, he spent time resting, walking, doing yoga, or light exercises to keep his body and mind balanced and avoid overload. Even though he took careful care of himself, mental pressure still existed. Lionel had to face worries about keeping his voice, about how to maintain his performance level in long shows lasting hours in front of thousands of audience members, about the non-stop expectations of fans and the media. There were nights when he stayed awake in the hotel room, practicing every note, recording different versions, checking the quality of the lyrics while trying to keep his voice stable. In the mornings, when he woke up with a tired body and a slightly hoarse voice, Lionel still told himself that he had to continue, because music was not just work, but the reason for existence, the thread connecting him to the audience and to himself. The scenes of taking care of his health and maintaining his voice became an indispensable part of Lionel's schedule. He often set breaks between recording sessions, limited alcohol and foods that could affect his vocal cords, maintained a balanced diet, and practiced breathing regularly before every performance. The long performances, sometimes consecutive for many days, required him to prepare mentally not only for the body, but also for the emotions. Lionel learned to focus on every note, to keep mental stability, so that even when tired or under pressure, his voice still rang out fully and emotionally, touching the audience's hearts. In this period, Lionel Richie realized that taking care of himself was not selfish but necessary to maintain the ability to bring music to people. Every note, every melody was carefully considered, practiced, and protected with all his strength and spirit. He understood that old age and pressure could not remove passion, but if he did not manage his body and voice, everything would collapse in just a few days of touring. Lionel learned to be patient, learned to listen to his body, and learned to love himself the way he had loved music and the audience for more than 4 decades. It was precisely in these challenging months and years that Lionel developed a special resilient spirit, learning to balance between work and health, between the stage and private life, and between fame and the quiet moments to recover. The quiet mornings in the hotel room, the careful practice sessions in the studio, and the moments he dedicated to himself became the foundation that helped Lionel Richie continue to stand firm on international stages, keeping his voice strong and his emotions authentic, despite old age, pressure, and continuous challenges clinging to him. That was the period when he learned that health and spirit were the most precious assets, and only when balancing those two factors could music ring out fully, and Lionel Richie could continue to bring his immortal love songs to the whole world. After many years facing pressure from continuous tours, studio work, and maintaining his reputation, Lionel Richie stepped into a phase full of personal upheavals, where the stresses from family, relationships, and responsibility toward his children became a heavier mental burden than ever. Having to be away from his children for long periods to complete international tours made Lionel feel empty, while the small arguments with Diane Alexander still lingered, like mental scars that never fully healed. Every time he looked at family photos, Lionel felt loneliness creeping in, questioning himself about his choices, about sacrificing private time and family happiness to pursue his career, and about how many important moments with his children he had missed. Lionel's inner world at this time was a sea of mixed emotions, both pride in his musical achievements and regret for the times that could not be returned with his children, and tormenting himself for the unnecessary moments of anger or arguments. On nights lying in the hotel after performances, he often sat quietly looking out the window, remembering his childhood days in Tuskegee, remembering the first rehearsals with piano and saxophone, remembering the moments in the studio when music was once the only place he could find comfort. Those recollections both calmed him and made the current loneliness and pressure even deeper, making Lionel realize that public success could not compensate for the lack of affection in family life. The long tours, combined with continuous studio sessions, forced Lionel to constantly move from one city to another, from one stage to another, recording room, while time for his children and family could only be counted in short moments. Each phone call, each video call became precious minutes, but also full of tension, because he always had to ensure he met the public's demands while not hurting his children. Many times, Lionel had to learn to endure loneliness on long flights, to restrain his emotions so he could step onto the stage with a smile and a voice full of energy, even though his heart still held longing and worry for his family. In this period, Lionel learned an important lesson about balance and resilience. Resilience was not about being rigid or emotionless, but about knowing how to stand firm under pressure, maintaining his career and reputation while still keeping a sensitive heart, knowing how to love and care for those around him. Every note, every lyric in the studio was not only work, but also Lionel's way to release pressure, turning loneliness and torment into emotion, helping his voice become deeper and more authentic. The late-night practice sessions. When the whole world had fallen silent, Lionel found peace again in music, to prepare his spirit to step onto the stage, to take the audience along with emotionally rich melodies, while learning to let music become the bridge between himself and his children, between fame and family, between pain and the power of survival. It was precisely in these times full of upheavals that Lionel Richie developed a special ability to keep his will and resilience strong in work, while nurturing a sensitive heart that knew empathy and cherished family affection. He understood that fame did not always bring happiness, and that the peaceful moments with his children, the private minutes in the studio, or the recollections of his youth were the anchors that helped him continue to stand firm. Every tour, every album, every note sung carried the painful experiences and lessons from his personal failures, turning Lionel into an artist who was not only great in talent, but also profound in emotion, knowing how to combine willpower, love for music, and family affection to overcome every event in life. After those long years enduring the pressure of tours, studio work, and marital upheavals, Lionel Richie began to find ways to heal and reconnect with his children, Nicole, Miles, and Sophia, the kids who had once endured separation and lack of affection during his busiest period. The first days were by no means easy. The distance and time apart had left cracks in their emotional bonds, making reconnection require patience and endurance. Lionel started with small steps, phone calls, sending letters, attending birthdays, and more importantly, taking time to listen, to understand each child's thoughts, feelings, and needs. He realized that to regain trust and closeness, promises or gifts were not enough. It had to be real presence, every sincere and persistent moment by his children's side. Gradually, music lessons became a special bridge between Lionel and his children. Nicole, Miles, and Sophia were guided by him on how to play instruments, practice vocals, understand rhythm, and turn emotions into music. Those study hours were not only for practice, but also time to talk, to share everyday stories, joys, sorrows, and the childhood memories they had missed when Lionel was busy with his career. Lionel used music as a connecting thread so the whole family could participate together, laugh together, feel together, and share moments that seemed lost forever. Every note echoing in the living room or studio carried forgiveness, healing, and the recreation of an invisible but strong bond between father and children. Those warm and joyful moments did not completely erase the tragic marks of the past. Lionel still remembered the missed birthdays, holidays, important moments in his children's lives, and the long periods away from home because of tours or studio sessions. But that very pain made the present moments more precious than ever. Lionel learned to cherish every laugh, every glance, every hug, and to turn each moment with his children into complete joy without regret. Family became a source of healing, the motivation for him to keep moving forward, not only on stage but also in his private life, where tears and longing were turned into music and connection. Lionel also learned to balance his packed tour schedule with time for family. He arranged gaps in his schedule, skipped less important performances to attend family events, ensuring his children knew that no matter how busy he was, their father was still present. He listened, observed, and participated in his children's daily lives, from music lessons and family dinners to games and bedtime stories. His presence was not only compensation for lost time, but also proof of unconditional love and the persistence to rebuild the relationship. That belated happiness, though it came after many years of separation and wounds, was more enduring and profound than ever. Lionel felt that true joy did not only come from stage lights, from albums or performances in front of thousands of audience members, but also from simple moments where the family gathered, laughed together, and shared music. Lionel Richie learned that after years of suffering, loss, and loneliness, happiness did not arrive all at once, but was built little by little, from patience, from presence, from sincere love, and from the ability to forgive. Every day with his children, every song they practiced together, or every shared moment became proof of the power of family affection and the ability to heal mental wounds, helping Lionel continue to keep his spirit strong, his voice strong, and the flame of music that he had preserved throughout his life. After the years of beginning to find happiness again with his family and children, Lionel Richie still could not forget the times full of upheavals and loneliness he had gone through. The divorce from Diane Alexander and the years of separation from Nicole, Miles, and Sophia had once left deep wounds in his heart, leaving a feeling of emptiness that no stage lights or praise could fill. Every time he stepped into an empty room in the quiet house, Lionel often remembered his youth days in Tuskegee, Alabama, the rehearsals in the church, the first moments with piano and saxophone, when music was his only friend who understood and accompanied him. At night, the faint light from the window was not enough to warm his body, but illuminated the memories still intact in his mind, where both hope and pain existed side by side. The empty nights in hotel rooms after tours, or the quiet mornings before studio sessions, became moments when Lionel faced himself. The gospel music from his youth still echoed in his mind, reminding him that no matter how harsh life was, there were still spiritual values to rely on. Lionel sang, practiced, wrote music, and raised his voice as a way to heal his soul, turning loneliness into motivation to keep moving forward. Every note, every lyric carried a piece of his life, a piece of experience he had never told anyone, becoming a spiritual connection with himself and with the world outside. Although the deep feeling of loneliness still existed, Lionel did not let it crush his spirit. He learned to be resilient, learned to live with pressure, learned to balance between work and personal emotions. Memories of family, of childhood, of the early days in music became part of the motivation for him to continue composing and performing. Lionel realized the true value of music did not lie in fame or awards, but in its ability to heal, connect, and inspire himself and others. Lionel's inner world was not only filled with loneliness, but also with regrets and losses he could not change. He regretted the days he could not be with his children, the evenings missing family moments, the tense moments when he did not know how to control his emotions. But those very pains formed empathy, sensitivity, and depth in his music, helping him understand that every moment, whether happy or sad, had value and contributed to creating a legend. Lionel learned to look back at the past, to face the losses, and at the same time to cherish the present, where he could sing, could listen, and could feel family love with a heart that had matured and become resilient. In the long, quiet nights when the audience had left and the stage was left with dim lights, Lionel often sat by the piano, listening to every melody echoing in the empty room. He remembered the long tours, the sleepless studio sessions, the times when he could only communicate with music to overcome loneliness. Music became the only place where he could dialogue with his emotions, where regrets and memories were understood, and where he found deep comfort that neither fame nor money could bring. The recollections of upheavals and deep loneliness were not only sad memories, but also proof of Lionel Richie's resilient ability. He had learned to turn pressure into creative energy, to turn loneliness into a rich source of emotion, to write music and perform. Every note, every song sung contained his entire life experience, the losses, the regrets, but at the same time carried strength, faith, and the determination that Lionel had forged over so many years. Those very experiences helped him become an artist who was both resilient and sensitive, who knew how to cherish music and family, to continue standing firm on international stages and in the hearts of millions of fans. After the years of reconnecting with his children and finding belated happiness, Lionel Richie once again stepped into a period that demanded he sacrifice himself to maintain his career and reputation. Continuous tours became his daily rhythm. Cross-continental flights, stage after stage, forcing him to be away from home for many weeks, many months away from his children, away from precious family moments that could not be compensated. Every performance was an opportunity to prove his talent, but at the same time, a challenge to his body and spirit. A tired body, a strained voice, and a heart constantly aching with homesickness. Lionel realized that to keep shining, he had to pour all his strength and will into every note, every step on stage, even if it meant sacrificing many important moments in his personal life. Besides the tours, writing music, preparing albums, and fulfilling music contracts were also constant pressures. Lionel had to complete songs, record, arrange, try many versions, fulfill contracts, while maintaining his image in the eyes of the public and media, where every detail was scrutinized carefully. The old vans carrying the crew through cities, the small studios, the music sheets and objects carrying memories from many years before all became witnesses to the non-stop sacrifice. Every microphone, every piano, every old rug in the studio was a trace of the long nights of practice, the months away from family, and the silent pain Lionel had to endure to maintain his career. Alongside the brilliant success, best-selling albums, prestigious awards, admiring audiences, were profound personal losses. Lionel many times experienced nights sleeping on the bus, sometimes practicing until exhaustion in the studio, both to prepare for the next tour and to maintain his vocal form. In those moments, he did not sing for fame or money, but to keep his spirit, to maintain emotion and connection with music, where he found the strength to exist amid loneliness and pressure. Every note sung in the studio or on stage carried sacrifice, contained homesickness, silent tears, and the resilience that Lionel had forged over many years. These years proved that Lionel Richie's voice was not only a performance tool, but also a means for him to survive, to keep his spirit strong amid waves of pressure, and to transform his personal suffering into creative energy. Every performance, every recording, every tour was proof of silent sacrifice, where success and loneliness walked side by side, where the brilliant stage lights could not cover the long, tiring nights and the longing for family. Lionel learned that music was not only a profession, but a spiritual support, a companion, and the reason for him to continue standing firm, even when the world around him kept challenging him. Though tired and sometimes feeling lonely, Lionel Richie still persisted, maintained his practice regimen, took care of his voice and health, and at the same time learned to keep his emotions balanced. The late-night practice sessions in the studio, the long days on the bus or in small recording rooms were all turned by him into strength, turning suffering into musical emotion, and turning personal sacrifice into part of the journey to become a legend. It was this very sacrifice, combined with talent and resilient will, that helped Lionel Richie not only survive but also shine on world stages and become a source of inspiration for millions of fans. After those long years of tireless work on stage, in the studio, and on the road touring, Lionel Richie began to realize that his talent and experience were not only to serve the audience, but could also become a source of inspiration for the younger generation. When invited to be a judge on the American Idol program, he did not only evaluate the contestants' skills or vocal quality, but also taught them the most important values: endurance, the ability to persevere and persist through every challenge; integrity, maintaining honesty and truthfulness in music; and the way to persistently pursue passion without being tempted by fleeting glory or pressure from the media. Lionel Richie observed each contestant, listened to each story, and shared his personal experiences, from the early days singing in the church, the exhausting rehearsals with the Commodores, to the long nights writing music and performing solo, to illustrate patience, confidence, and self-preservation in an industry full of traps. Through each coaching session, Lionel emphasized that success does not only come from voice or technical ability, but also from the way an artist faces failure, faces pressure, and keeps their spirit strong before every challenge. He recounted the nights away from his children, the failures on tours, the personal scandals, and the pressure to maintain his reputation, so the contestants understood that music is not only performing on stage, but also a lesson in perseverance, determination, and the ability to endure pressure. Each story Lionel shared was deeply authentic, making the contestants feel that even a legend had gone through loneliness, loss, and stress. But thanks to willpower and love for music, they could overcome every challenge. Lionel Richie's influence on the new generation was not only in his advice or technical guidance, but also in the way he lived and maintained his dignity in the profession. Even though globally famous, even though he had countless hits and awards, he still maintained a humble attitude, respected art, and always placed the value of music and truth above fame or profit. Young artists learned from him that perseverance and honesty would help them last long in the industry, while short-term actions or chasing fleeting glory easily led to failure. Lionel became a long-lasting role model in the profession, proving that an artist is not only measured by success, but also by the way they maintain their character and inspire others. Lionel's personal and career stories became valuable lessons. The days away from home because of tours, the exhausting nights practicing in the studio, the moments facing media pressure and a broken marriage were all told as living proof of patience, self-learning, and turning pain into creative strength. The contestants and the audience all felt the power of music not only as entertainment, but also as a tool for healing, connection, and inspiration. Lionel Richie did not only teach how to sing, how to perform, or how to create hits, but more importantly, he taught how to become a complete artist, maintaining values, knowing how to love, being patient, and always continuing to move forward despite failure or loss. By guiding young artists, Lionel conveyed the message that a music career is a long journey, where endurance and integrity are more important than short-term glory. He proved that an artist can have a long career in the industry if they know how to persist, learn, cherish music, and accompany the audience with a sincere heart. Lionel Richie, with his experience, talent, and sensitive heart, has become a shining example, helping the new generation understand that success is not only fame or awards, but the way an artist faces, overcomes challenges, and inspires all those who pursue their passion. Throughout the process of being a judge and mentor, Lionel remained true to himself, always placing artistic value above all. And that very thing made him a role model not only in music, but also in the way of living and facing adversity. The contestants, young artists, and audience all realized that through Lionel Richie, they learned how to turn loneliness, pressure, and failure into a source of strength to survive, to contribute, and to shine. A valuable lesson that only someone who has gone through many upheavals like him could pass on in such an authentic and profound way. After many decades of non-stop dedication, Lionel Richie has built a career that few artists can match, leaving deep marks in the history of global pop and R&B music. His achievements are not only numbers on the charts or the amount of best-selling albums, but also prestigious awards, proof of his talent and influence on the world. He won 4 Grammy Awards, an Oscar and a Golden Globe for the song Say You, Say Me, was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and owns countless global hits like Hello, All Night Long, Dancing on the Ceiling, Easy, and 3 Times a Lady. These songs not only conquered audiences of all ages, but also became cultural symbols, echoing through many decades and being learned, covered, or sampled by young artists in modern music productions. Lionel Richie's achievements are not only in selling millions of records, but also in the fact that his music remains alive, still touching the hearts of audiences around the world. Despite changes in eras and music styles, the legacy Lionel left goes far beyond awards and fame. He is one of the artists who shaped modern pop R&B style, subtly combining emotional ballads and lively melodies, creating timeless love songs that also contain the power of life experience. His music reflects stories of joy, sadness, loneliness, loss, and resilience, making listeners not only enjoy but also feel and empathize. From the early days, singing gospel in the church in Tuskegee, to standing on international stages in front of thousands of audience members, Lionel has proven that music is not only a means of entertainment, but also a way to convey emotions, nurture the spirit, and connect people with each other. But what makes Lionel Richie's legacy even more special is the way he combined endurance, family, and mentoring into his entire life journey. Even though he went through many personal upheavals, divorces, being away from his children, continuous tour, and studio pressure, he still kept his spirit strong, maintained his career, and made time for his children, especially Nicole, Miles, and Sophia. Lionel is not only a father and a mentor, but also a living symbol of the ability to be resilient, to stand firm amid pressure and challenges, and to balance personal success with family responsibility. He taught younger generations of artists the vital values in the profession: patience, honesty, perseverance, and how to maintain integrity even when facing glory or temptation. The image of Lionel Richie is a model of a resilient artist, strong in every circumstance. He has survived the most difficult periods of his life, turning loneliness, pressure, and failure into strength to continue contributing. The long nights of practice, the tiring tours, the moments away from family, and facing media pressure were all turned by Lionel into creative energy and emotion in every note. His music is proof of determination, of never giving up, of the ability to rise despite every challenge. Besides his musical achievements and influence, Lionel Richie also left a cultural legacy. His music is tied to the pride of black music in America, helping spread pop R&B values to the whole world. The figure of Lionel, from a poor childhood boy who felt isolated in the Tuskegee environment to a global legend, is vivid proof of perseverance, of faith in himself, and in the healing power of music. He became a symbol not only of talent, but also of loyalty to art, of the ability to inspire, and of long-lasting influence across many generations of artists. Lionel Richie did not only leave immortal songs, but also a living example of endurance, love for music, and human resilience. Every song, every tour, and every performance is proof of the journey overcoming adversity, learning to cherish family, colleagues, and audiences, and turning challenges into creative strength. From the difficult early childhood days, the years of sacrifice for his career, to old age still standing firm on international stages, Lionel Richie has proven that music is not only art, but also a way of life, a way for a person to keep their heart and spirit strong, a way for a legend to inspire every generation, not only with his voice, but with his entire life and resilient character. With everything he has gone through, Lionel Richie has become a symbol of resilience, enduring vitality, and genuine love for music. The legacy he leaves is not only in the hits or awards, but also in the way he lived, the way he loved, the way he loved, the way he inspired, and the way he continued to stand firm amid challenges, so that music, family, and human values always exist and echo through time. At age 76, Lionel Richie stood in the dim backstage light of the stage, where every laugh, every greeting, and the brilliant lights had become part of his memories, part of the journey he had gone through for 4 decades. He looked back at his life, from the childhood days in Tuskegee, Alabama, with the gospel church singing sessions, the days practicing in dark rooms, to the years with the Commodores, the long tours and the pressure from fame, then to the brilliant solo successes, the Grammy Awards, the Oscar, the Billboard charts, and the immortal songs that the whole world still sings. But the lights and awards were only part of the story. The voids, the loneliness, the nights away from his children, the divorces, and the mental pressure were the real challenges Lionel had overcome. He knew that endurance, the ability to endure and be resilient, was the true strength, not fame, money, or fleeting glory. Lionel walked through the backstage hallways, where every item, from the old piano, microphone, studio rug, to the small memory objects, seemed to tell the story of every laborious moment and sacrifice in his life. The tours lasting for weeks, the exhausting studio recording sessions, the sleepless nights, the moments away from his children and family, all became indelible marks, the challenges that had shaped his resilient will, the ability to turn suffering into music, turn loneliness into strength, and turn every note into a living message. Lionel took a deep breath, feeling his heartbeat blend with the rhythm of the sounds around him, as if the entire stage and backstage understood and reminded him that the life of a legend is not only measured by titles or awards, but by the way he stood firm, by the way he lived and loved in every circumstance. Family, his children, Nicole, Miles, Sophia, were now the guiding life for Lionel in his later years. He saw their smiles, heard their laughter, and felt the bond that he had once missed because of tours and career pressure. The music lessons with his children, the family dinners sharing everyday stories, the peaceful moments before bedtime, all became healing medicine, proof of the love and perseverance Lionel had learned through all the events of his life. Music and family not only went hand in hand, but were also the values that created true strength, the place where he found peace amid the storm of fame and pressure. Lionel remembered the quiet, dark nights in the studio, when the small light shone on the piano, when he practiced the final notes for an album, or the nights on the tour bus. Eyes closed, body tired, but his heart still burning with passion. Those very moments had taught him that endurance was not the ability to endure pain or sacrifice, but the ability to rise, to continue contributing, and to love even after going through wounds, loneliness, and disappointment. Lionel had turned every painful experience into a lesson, each song into a message about love, perseverance, and the ability to recover. Now, as the stage lights were about to brighten, Lionel looked around the backstage, the place that had witnessed the sweat, the sleepless nights, the laughter, and the tears. All those memories blended with his heartbeat and the music, creating a complete story of an artist who had lived, who had loved, and who had fought non-stop. Lionel stepped onto the stage. The light shone down. His voice rang out, every note containing pain, joy, sacrifice, and love. The audience heard not only music, but also felt a life, a resilient heart, and a spirit that never surrendered. In that moment, Lionel Richie was not only a music legend, but also a symbol of resilience, the enduring strength of a human being, the strength coming from music, from family, and from the ability to recover. The years of challenges, the complicated relationships, the tours, studio sessions, and media pressure all became an inseparable part of the journey that built the man and artist Lionel Richie. He stood there at age 76, looking back at his entire life, feeling every moment that had passed, cherishing every experience. And with his voice, his eyes, and his smile, he sent a profound message to the world. No matter how many challenges one faces, no matter how far from family, facing loneliness or loss, love and music will always be the guiding light, and endurance, the ability to stand firm and continue contributing, is the true strength that no fame or money can replace. And when Lionel Richie sang the familiar melodies, the music blended with memories, with the light, with the smiles of his children and all the fans. The audience did not only hear a legend, but also felt a heart that had lived fully, had sacrificed, had loved, and had been resilient. Every note was a story. Every song was proof of the journey overcoming adversity, proof of the power of family love and music, and a message that even in the loneliest and most painful moments, endurance is the most precious asset, the guiding light for an entire life, and for all those who dare to dream and dare to live fully with their passion. The story of Lionel Richie's life is a vivid proof of both the glory and the pain that a music legend must go through. When looking back at the journey from the gospel singing sessions in the church in Tuskegee, Alabama, to the period of fame with the Commodores, and then the brilliant success in his solo career, one cannot help but feel compassion for his silent sacrifices. Lionel had to face loneliness during continuous long tours, had to be away from his children during important years, endure non-stop media pressure, and go through 2 broken marriages. The long nights practicing in the studio, the tiring tour bus rides, the moments tormenting himself for being away from his children and missing family moments, all showed that behind the brilliant stage lights was a soul full of pain, still having to be resilient and strive every day. However, those very challenges also highlighted Lionel Richie's value, his patience, the ability to overcome loneliness, turning suffering into music, and reconnecting emotionally with his children is proof of a person who is both sensitive and strong. His music does not only entertain, but also conveys faith, hope, and the ability to recover after loss. The lesson from his life is very clear for the American people. Success is not only measured by fame or money, but by the ability to endure, to love, and to continue contributing despite adversity. Lionel teaches us that family and passion are the guiding light, that endurance, resilience in overcoming challenges is the real strength, and that every person, even when facing difficulties, can still create positive impact, inspire the community, and the next generation. His life is a reminder that human value is shaped by the way we overcome pain, maintain character, and live fully with our passion. If you feel that Lionel Richie's story touches your heart, please hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next emotional stories. Thank you for accompanying us today. See you again in the next video to explore the journeys of overcoming adversity and inspiring other music legends.